So India has been on a path to degradation for the last 76 years. So these are small hiccups about the outcome of elections, but the fact remains that India is falling apart, it's getting worse by the day, and it does not matter who controls the country. Modi is I don't like him at all, but he's just a symptom of the underpinning cultural problem to do with the country.
嗨嗨嗨！欢迎大家来到果果的新闻频道。本期重要看点：震惊！一位印度专家贾扬特竟直言不愿在印度生活，这是为什么？就在印度大选结果震动世界之时，这位专家抛出惊人观点：印度76年来一直持续解体，莫迪只是文化问题的替罪羊。他更揭露印度社会致命伤。没有契约精神，没有荣誉体系，甚至最亲的人就是最大的敌人。为什么西方吹捧的印度经济奇迹被他称为数学骗局？为什么说印度 GDP 增长 10%， 实际效果还不如美国增长 1%？ 更劲爆的是，他亲身比较中印生活，竟说出在中国获得自由，在印度只能绝望。今晚我们将揭开这位专家口中宁愿不活也不去印度的惊人真相。点击关注，带你来看国际视野下真实的印度危机。请看前方发来的报道。
Hello, David. Thanks for having me again.
Of course. You are now a friend of the show. Anytime I mention you, everybody's like, please bring him back in. And I always promise the community that I am going to be bringing you. And then usually you travel around the world a lot. And I always tell them, hey, that depends on his schedule. When he's available, he lets me know. And usually we do it. So anyway, very, very excited to have you here because I like to get your feedback, inputs, and insights, analysis, whatever term you want to use, about the recent outcome elections in India. Now, those elections, in my opinion, have shaken the trajectory now for the country, which is the most populous nation on earth here, except now we're going to be seeing something different. And the question I would like to start with is, who's going to be controlling Modi right now, since his party doesn't have majority?
Well, firstly, David, I don't think the trajectory of India has changed because of this election. India was falling apart. India was going into a crisis mode continuously. And that has been going on since the time the British left the country. So India has been on a path to degradation for the last 76 years. So these are small hiccups about the outcome of elections. But the fact remains that India is falling apart. It's getting worse by the day. And it does not matter who controls the country. Modi is I don't like him at all, but he's just a symptom of the underpinning cultural problem to do with the country. Now, people usually ask me, how does he not being in majority matter to the country? You really have to understand one cultural underpinning of Indian society. And the cultural underpinning is that India has no concept of honor. There's no concept of contracts. There's no concept of friendship. There's no concept of individuality and respect for what you agree with. So your friends and families are your actually biggest enemies. Wow. That is why people hide their gold in the ground without telling their own family members, and they erect huge high walls around their houses, because if you don't, then the neighbor will shift the fence overnight. So you have to understand that this is a country without honor. This is a country where you can trust absolutely no one. And the people closest to you are your biggest enemies.
Yeah. What about the people? What about the Indian people? I mean, I know some people in India that, they are educated, but they have no sort of opportunities for employment because the government is not creating this. The government is not sort of taking care of infrastructure and so forth. So what happened to the people? Isn't the government supposed there to sort of, Modi in this case, he's been in power over almost 2 decades now, 14 years to be exact. What has he achieved economically speaking that we can talk of?
Well, he cannot achieve anything, David. I usually like to say that in an organization of two people in India, there's one person too many. People can't organize in that country. People can't trust each other in that country. And people are completely unskilled. If I need a plumber in San Francisco, I call someone in to do my repair job. If I need a plumber in India, I might need to pay him only a couple of dollars to do my job, but he will create 3 more problems or maybe 5 more new problems for me before he leaves. So I'm better off doing my plumbing job myself in India. And that is what I actually do. So the problem is that Indians are responsible for the status quo. And that is why I always say that Modi is just a symptom of the problem. Modi is not the problem of the country. Neither is Modi the solution of the country's problem. The core problem is Indians are irrational and they don't have the moral fabric. They don't have the honor system. And that is why India will continue to degrade irrespective of which party is in power in that country.
And yet Western analysts are saying, well, the economy of India is going to sort of be, as a matter of fact, I heard some Western think tanks saying that the economy now of India, it will be considered like the third in the world. And I was like, hold on a second. Where are you guys coming up with these statements from? And even one of our viewers in the channel here wrote, his name is Connie Lee, 9678. He wrote, and I quote here, Dr. David, the Indian government has been claiming for each of the last few years that its GDP growth is higher than that of every other country. What would be a way of verifying the calculations of their figure, which sound a bit dubious? End of quote. What do you think, Jahan?
Well, it doesn't matter, David. Even if you consider Indian GDP growth to be 10%, and let's assume that for mathematical purpose to be 10%, it is erroneous to compare GDP growth of a country with GDP per capita of $2,500 with a country whose GDP per capita might be $60,000. So if the United States with $60,000 per capita GDP grows at 1%, it adds $600 per year to its per capita GDP. Whereas if India adds 10% to its per capita GDP, it only adds $250 to its per capita GDP, which means that India would still be growing at half as much pace as the US would be growing with its much relatively insignificant percentage-wise GDP growth. The issue is, David, and we learned this in the middle school, that you cannot compare percentage with percentages unless the baseline is similar. You can't compare the growth rate of a mouse with a growth rate of an elephant. And that is what the error these big economists do. A lot of them are actually empty suits, and they really are naive and illiterate on cultural basis. They don't really understand that there's a difference between people around the world. Their religions are different, cultures are different. They just look at graphs and think that every country would eventually follow the way China or South Korea did.
I mean, I even read somewhere where it says that it's going to overtake. The Indian economy is going to overtake that of China. I was like, what?
Well,
it's ridiculous.
So 24 hours back, I was in China, David. I spent a lot of time in China. We invest in China through the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. I love China. China and India are not comparable at all. If you wanted me to move to China and live there, I would very, very happily do so. I get freedom in China. I get conveniences, comfort, and facilities in China. If you wanted me to live in India, I will shoot myself. That is how different the two countries are. You should not even be comparing India with China. China is a sane country. China is a rational country. You can have a decent existence in China. You cannot have a decent existence in India. I like to say, David, without any exaggeration, that Indians live lives of cultures. They live and die like. That's what you see. The moment you land in India, things are chaotic. People don't really have a sane, big.
精彩视频看完了，印度专家从4个方面对比中国和印度的巨大差异。一、社会信任与契约精神。印度专家尖锐指出，印度社会存在无荣誉体系的文化缺陷，认为朋友和家人是最大的敌人，居民需要隐藏财物，修建高墙防范邻居。这种低信任社会严重阻碍经济发展。相比之下，中国被描述为理性国家，具备契约精神和基本社会信任，这为经济协作提供了基础保障。二、治理效能对比。印度困境，专家用2人组织中就有1人冗余比喻行政效率低下，指出基础设施建设和就业机会创造的系统性失败，批评印度政府即使在经济高增长数据下，人均 GDP 增量仍仅为美国的 41.7%， 10% 增长率对应250美元 vs 美国 1% 对应600美元。中国优势，明确肯定中国提供便利舒适和设施，特别强调投资者能通过香港交易所参与中国经济，体现金融体系完善和政策稳定性。3、经济发展质量。专家通过基数效应分析，揭示印度增长数据的局限性。即使名义 GDP 增速达 10%， 因人均 GDP 基数仅2500美元，实际增量远低于发达国家，而中国作为参照系被多次强调不可比拟。其发展模式被描述为理性可预测，与印度混沌无序形成鲜明的对比。4、生活体验差异。印度专家愿在中国生活，却不愿意居住在印度，将中国城市描述为提供体面生活，而印度则是人与畜无异的生存状态。这种情绪化表述虽不严谨，但反映出基础设施、公共服务等方面的感知差距。谢谢大家观看，喜欢请点赞、评论加订阅，你的支持是我最大动力。比心，明天见，拜拜。刚刚有个口误啊，不好意思，拜拜，明天见。